It all began on an ordinary morning. I stood outside, coffee in hand and slippers on my feet, when I noticed a neighborhood enforcer, a local authority figure, aiming a stun gun directly at my wife. Yes, my actual wife. What they didn't know, though, was that she had a history in the Special Forces, and her former team was already set up with laser sights focused on the enforcer's chest. Lena, calm as ever, had anticipated something like this. She didn't flinch. She simply let it unfold because she knew all too well that small-time power players, like this enforcer, don't know what they're really dealing with. Me, on the other hand, I flinched hard. 1 minute, we were debating whether we had enough charcoal for the weekend barbecue. And the next, she was flat on the driveway, a man in a fake sheriff's vest shouting into his walkie-talkie like he was storming an active war zone. We had moved into Willowbrook Estates just 6 months earlier. The brochure had promised peace, security, and family values. What we got instead was a neighborhood ruled by a petty homeowners association, HOA, with delusions of grandeur. Every house looked like a clone, lawns trimmed so perfectly they could have been models for military buzz cuts. And heaven forbid you set out your trash, cans, even 1 minute early. Lena found the whole thing hilarious. The HOA rulebook was thicker than her old deployment manuals, but she didn't mind. She liked the quiet, the good schools, and the lack of loud parties next door. Our first run-in with them was over her matte black Jeep, a military-style vehicle she had parked slightly over the driveway line, barely touching the grass. The next morning, we received a violation notice. I laughed. Lena didn't. She took the paper, scanned it, and quietly filed it into a folder marked Willowbrook Absurdities. The HOA president, Karen, ran things like a pastel-wearing dictator, clipboard in hand, sweaters in constant rotation, and a permanent scowl. Lena said Karen had a way of giving off aggressive energy that was supposed to intimidate. Lena didn't even bat an eye. She just smiled and kept tuning her Jeep suspension. That got us on the HOA's radar. We started getting regular inspections and citations, each more absurd than the last. Then the HOA took it up a notch and formed the Willowbrook Enforcement Team, a group of 5 men who looked like they had failed auditions for mall security, decked out in camouflage pants, black polos, fake badges, and carrying flashlights, clipboards, and pepper spray. I once saw one of them practicing baton drills in the cul-de-sac like he was prepping for a SWAT team tryout. Lena simply watched them, as if observing a circus act. She'd been through far worse before. After a while, she started spending more time on long walks, asking odd questions, and even running wires through the attic. When I asked what she was doing, she just said, "Watching. They're not ready yet." Meanwhile, these so-called enforcers were growing bolder. They installed cameras on stop signs, fined kids for sidewalk chalk drawings, and even cited an elderly neighbor for having rebellious garden gnomes, one of which had its middle finger up. They treated it like a hate crime. Then one day, I caught one of them peeking into our window. Lena didn't scream. She simply asked, "Do you want to test your pepper spray on someone who's been tear-gassed before breakfast?" He left quickly. We threw a 4th of July cookout, burgers, beers, and a good chance to let off steam. Lena parked the Jeep right next to the HOA sign, just to make a point. It was no surprise when the Willowbrook enforcement guys showed up, citation books in hand, as if they were preparing for battle. One of them, wearing a body cam, narrated the whole thing like he was storming a compound. Lena, without saying a word, stood by the Jeep. They issued a warning, and she simply said, "You're welcome to try." That's when one of them pulled out a stun gun and fired. Lena dropped to the ground. I froze. Red laser dots lit up the enforcers' bodies from every direction. Her old team, in position from rooftops and alleyways, had them all in their sights. The officer who fired the taser stopped smiling. Lena opened one eye, looked at him, and said, "I've always wondered what it would feel like to get zapped by an amateur." She had been documenting everything, every encounter, every violation. The HOA wasn't backing down. They added new rules aimed specifically at her Jeep, even forming a neighborhood stability force, which only made the absurdity worse. Lena didn't confront them directly. She just took longer jogs, gathered information, and listened to neighbors. She found out that everyone had been bullied over issues like improper tarp tension and reflective dog collars. With her help, the community slowly rallied. The enforcers ramped up their tactics, random visits, measuring lawns, drones flying over backyards. Lena kept recording, collecting evidence. The tension in the neighborhood was palpable. Then came the day the kids drew rainbows and unicorns with sidewalk chalk. Karen and her team imposed $100 fines on the families. The next HOA meeting was packed, with furious parents shouting at the board. Lena sat quietly in the back, her folder by her side. The next morning, another citation for the Jeep arrived, this one claiming it had a warlike aesthetic. Lena smiled and said, "It's time." At another barbecue that evening, Lena parked the Jeep directly under the HOA sign with a flag in the windshield. Just like clockwork, the enforcers showed up again. One read aloud a warning, and Lena shot back. Which part? The freedom or the horsepower? The lead officer, sunglasses on, pulled out his taser once more. She stood her ground. "You'll have to go through me." He fired. This time, Lena dropped, but it was all part of the plan. Her team was already in place, laser sights focused. As she rolled over, she said, "You need to recalibrate your aim." Lena stood up, pulled the wires off her body, and was handed a folder filled with evidence. She turned to the neighbors and said, "It's all documented. Body cams, drones, witnesses. It's all been submitted." A man in a suit stepped forward. Agent Walker, Department of Justice, Office of Civil Enforcement. He announced, "We've been monitoring Willowbrook since February. Today confirms enough to proceed." The taser-wielding officer was arrested. Another attempted to object, but was quickly reminded that impersonating law enforcement is a felony. Karen arrived next, flanked by her board members. Agent Walker confronted her. "You authorized this task force. You're responsible for their actions." Karen scoffed and tried to play it off as a private matter. Walker shot back. "Your charter expired 16 months ago. You've illegally collected $100,000 in fines. That's not private. That's federal." Karen turned pale as Lena handed over more documents, proof of fraud, overreach, and harassment. "You're under investigation for fraud, harassment, and potential RICO violations," Walker said. Karen was escorted away, no pastel cardigan to soften the blow. By nightfall, everything was quiet. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones, and Jim, the guy across the street, teared up, thanking Lena. He thought he was going to lose his car to HOA fines, but now it was all over. A week later, the HOA was officially dissolved. Fines are nullified, and the task force disbanded. Lena deleted her files and went back to jogging, like nothing had ever happened. At the next emergency meeting, someone nominated her for HOA president. She accepted with a shrug. Her first act as president, she shredded the rulebook. Her second act, banning citations, fines, and vests. "The community will run on respect, transparency, and trust," she said, looking back at the crowd. "And if anyone finds a clipboard labeled Civil Enforcement Division, toss it into the nearest fire pit." The laughter that followed was genuine. Lena wasn't just my wife. She was a force of nature, a patient storm that tore down tyranny without ever raising her voice. The lesson here is simple. Power abused always invites its own downfall. True strength doesn't show off. It watches, waits, and acts with precision. Leadership is built on respect, not fear. Lena's quiet strength dismantled an entire system of control. It's a reminder, true power isn't about domination. It's about standing firm with integrity and making a difference when it counts. Her story proves that courage and patience can overcome even the most oppressive forces, inspiring change. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to share it with friends and family.